Well, hello everyone and welcome to my library. If you're new here, hello, my name is Chinsia, and if you're not new here and you're one of my lovely regulars, hi, how are you? I hope you're doing splendidly. So today, we're kind of in this vloggy section because I need the computer, because we're talking about stats, baby. I know, you heard me right. We're talking about analytics, we're talking about all the juicy gossip behind the scenes of someone who, writes romances for a living. I know, you're probably like, what? What do I do? I know, I'm a very strange writer. I've been doing my romance writing for just over a month and potentially a half now. We're getting up to that point now. And the numbers that come in are fascinating to analyze. So that's what today's video is all about. And I should stress that this video is also sponsored by Dorian, which is the platform that I'm using. But I'm really just talking about the stats because I think it's really cool. So let's get into it, shall we? So, we have to get a little bit personable before we get into the discussion because it plays an important part. It's not something I discuss on YouTube a lot, which is my personal life, or rather even like my sexuality, where I lie and all that jazz. I've hinted at it now and then, but it's not something I very much discussed. However, I knew when I got into romance writing, I wanted to cater to people similar to me in the romance field. And when I mean by that, I also mean my sexuality, my interests, my romantic interests, all that jazz. And I was actually inspired by a game, which I haven't played personally, but I was the witness of someone playing it. And that was the Assassin's Creed Odyssey. A partner of mine was playing it, and I noticed at the beginning that they could play like either gender, which is very exciting, only of the binaries, but obviously they could play either girl or boy. And I went, please play the girl because she's gorgeous. To which my partner, said, okay, let's do that. But then when you got to play the game, you could play the lady in the same way you would play the man, and vice versa, which meant intimate romantic scenes that happened within the game could be same-gendered, opposite-gendered, whatever you fancied. And I was living for it. And I know when I was a writer, I always struggled with picking a side. As someone who likes everyone, put it out there, likes everyone, when I write romance stories, it's very hard for me to almost pick a side, who I want people to fall in love with or who I want to romanticize my protagonist going for. And it almost felt strange to fit my stories into a box. So with the Dorian platform, however, it's, if anyone unfamiliar, it's a storyboarding where you as a writer create choose your own adventure episodes for a storyline, and I'm doing a Hades and Persephone storyline. However, I'm also doing a Persephone and Hecate storyline. Basically, I wanted to cater to a same kind of storyline under the same premise, but for anyone regardless of their sexuality, and that includes asexual plot lines, which I have incorporated all into a singular storyline, which is something that I never thought I could do until I obviously found this platform and I could play with the limitations of what's expected from a writer, which has been challenging in a sense that storylines are very complicated. I've shared with you some of the storylines that I've created online. Interesting with this platform, however, is that I have access to data. Basically, you kind of like the behind the scenes, even though you're a writer, you're also the behind the scenes of a creator. And with this platform, you get access through just your free membership to the stats and analytics of how people play your game, and it's fascinating. So I'm going to share with you some of the insights I've had today. So for today, I've actually spent the day playing around with all the episodes of my story based on the analytics. And how you play the game is you obviously have choices, and you can see what percentages of players either play certain choices. You can see how many played which one, which are out of what storyline you open, but also where they drop off, how much they go forward, etc. So you can see where you lose people, and you can see what interests them, where they're going, etc. And it kind of changed my game. When I'm reading everything about this, it affirms certain things that I thought were too niche, particularly with the Hecate storyline, which we'll get into, but also where people fall on the scale of their personal interests, and also how people are playing in terms of money. So even though it's not a money game, there are certain choices when you're playing the Dorian app where you have to have hearts, and where people invest their hearts into certain storylines is again really fascinating. What's also interesting about the stats is that you can see where people make choices that you weren't expecting them to take, and you have to analyze your own writing and realize what you're not giving away that makes sense for you in your head, but doesn't make sense to the reader. And therefore you have to adapt your writing, and which I love. I love the idea that I can analyze how my readers are actually responding to my writing, particularly particular characters in of themselves, and also how clear I am with this writing style, because writing a choose your own adventure story is very different. In your head, you know more as the writer, and traditional writing methods are kind of more elusive. You have to kind of be more elusive in a traditional book. You don't want to give your plot away. At the same time, if you were to hand the baton over to the reader, you can't always judge that they know what's going to happen or would make the same kind of changes or responses to like clues. Imagine an Agatha Christie novel without the bloody clues mentioned in it. You as a reader will be like, I have no idea, I can't solve it whatsoever, because those clues aren't dropped in part of the narrative. They're subtle, but they're still mentioned in there. And when you're writing a choose your own adventure story, when you want people to take a particular route, you have to build up more evidence to suggest that a certain option will be more beneficial to them without being on the nose. It's fascinating. And you can see from the stats where I not make mistakes, but rather I didn't think you'd all take that choice based on in my head where I thought you'd be going on my understanding of where the narrative's going, because I didn't make it almost clear enough as why, you know, examples would be beneficial. So here's a good example. So in the first episode, I have a scene where you meet Haron, who is the boatsman of the underworld in my version of it. You're in a labyrinth and you meet him, and you're hidden behind a rock. You see him, and I expected everyone to attack Haron based on how I know the character is behind the scenes. Like, everything that I knew would benefit the player to attack him. It would make a better story. So I put that as a paid for option on my storyline, as you can see, as it's highlighted in pink. Paid for options are highlighted in pink. However, you can see that the majority percentage actually took the I don't know who he is, or I'm going to stay hidden, which I didn't think they'd take. For me, when I'm playing an adventure game, I kind of was like, there's no risk. I'm going to take all the risks in the world, because that's how I am as a person, and also how I imagined my protagonist to behave. And it's just a whole new dimension of how the protagonist behaves to the vast majority. 62% would rather stay hidden, and rather than attack him, the way I set this up, either they chose to surrender or they stayed hidden, rather than take the advantageous advantage of taking down Haron, which I thought was an epic scene that I wrote afterwards. But the fact that I clearly didn't make it clear as a writer about why it would be beneficial to take this guy down and escape, rather than the idea of surrendering to the man in the labyrinth. Something as a writer you don't get privy to. Like, if you published a book, say on Amazon, a self-published book, you wouldn't get this kind of feedback. You don't know how your readers' mindsets work, and seeing how they work is just ingenious. And I should stress, this is all for free. You don't have to pay extra to see these stats. They're just, you write your story, and after it's published, you can see them. Another thing that's very traditional in romancing kind of genre that I was trying to obviously cater to in my writing is the idea of being a bit flirty, being a bit not aggressive, but we all know the trope of haters turning into lovers, these two people that have that kind of sexual tension, but they kind of hate each other at work, or they pick on each other here and there. So I tried to play into that with certain options where I would have effectively sassy options, which again, people didn't pick as much as I thought they would, which is really surprising. So here we have an example of, Lord Hades has just read your mind. How do you react? You can just say, pardon, what are you implying? Which is what are you insinuating? I'm going to act ignorant to the fact that you clearly just read my mind. Rather than the second most option is, how dare you, after all you've done, which is the more aggressive one. But then the sassy flirty option, it depends on what game you want to play, had 0 click-throughs. The idea of avoiding sexual banter blows my mind, but people chose that. But again, it's probably my fault. But the main takeaway I got from this is actually on my last episode. I asked people feedback they had an opportunity to win some hearts if they told me who their favourite love interest was out of the storylines. And Hades was the overwhelming majority. I think there was one person that said Hecate and everyone said Hades. However, the stats say otherwise, people. So there's a lot of misconceptions about LGBTQ+ stories getting marginalised, niched. People prefer not to publish them because they think that they're too niche, the market is far too small for them, and they don't think they'll be profitable, and therefore publishers kind of sideline them to niche publishers or not mainstream ones. However, come on, For starters, one of the best-selling ever retellings of an ancient myth has been Achilles and Patroclus' story in the Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. So surely that should give a big hint that people are interested in LGBTQIA stories, but still, the misconception lies ahead. But my own data also negates that misconception. The people who have played my Hecate line have paid in hearts for every single romantic option with Hecate. Hecate, in the LGBTQIA storyline, has a 100% click-through rate of the LGBTQIA players, or the people who are interested in that storyline, paying to see Hecate in her underwear and having a sex scene with Hecate. However, people playing the Hades, even though he's the more popular character by people picking to play that game, they aren't willing to pay. So, if anyone out there is in the publishing world and they have this misconception that LGBTQIA stories do not pay, I beg to differ. There is clearly a market for it. According to my own story, in just 6 episodes, the Hecate storyline, though she's a smaller community, is the highest grossing in terms of percentage. And I say she's a smaller percentage. She's not actually that small. So if we take a look at this screenshot, I always introduce the later episodes, if you want to play this, as the straight line with Hades or the LGBTQIA storyline with Hecate. And we can see the percentages here. 59% play the Hades line, but 40% play the Hecate line. That is not as niche as I thought it would be. I thought I basically would be writing the Hecate line for myself. I thought it was just me. But 40% of my audience want to play the Hecate line, which again, people aren't catering to LGBTQIA enough. There's clearly a market for it. I mean, I know I wrote this because I enjoy writing these kind of stories as well. I mean, I enjoy writing all of them. I like everyone. However, I wrote it because I really appreciated it whenever there was an option in a game to play it as a gay way. The market is clearly there, and I'm going to continue writing LGBTQIA storylines within my stories. And I can see that it's clearly popular and that they are invested in Hecate. I mean, hell, Hecate is such a temptation that even those people who take the Hades storyline, they get to his sex dungeon, and then there's an opportunity to have sex with Hades in the dungeon. And Hades basically asks you, do you like me? And 76% say to Hades, yes, I like you. But 23% say, actually, I prefer Hecate. So even the people who have gone down the Hades storyline actually go back to Hecate. Like, it's almost like I converted people halfway down. They're like, but wait a minute, I have an opportunity to potentially have sex with her, so I'd rather bend it. I have no idea. Or it could potentially be people who are asexual, or they're people who don't want to play the sex scene because they're not comfortable with that, picking the Hecate line. At the same time, people have gone down the Hades line and rerouted to Hecate, which again is a fascinating insight. And what's really cute as a writer is that I actually bring in a newer love interest into the later episodes. So there's a potential for a love triangle in each version of the game. So with the Hades storyline, I bring in Thanatos, who is Death himself. He's gorgeous as hell, and you get options to flirt with him. And in the Hecate line, I bring in Nyx, who is the goddess of the night. She is the night personified, effectively, and she's also gorgeous as well. No one chooses to flirt with them. They choose to stay loyal to their Hecate or Hades, regardless. Like, the idea that people actually get emotionally invested into characters that you're writing, you know of it. I mean, I obviously, as a reader, I get invested in characters that I'm like, I don't want one to die. Like, I mean, I can never get over some of the characters that have been killed off of some of my favourite books, or even books that aren't my favourite books. But you don't see it. You put that book out into the world, or you put your writing out into the world, and you don't see it. Maybe famous authors see it. They see fan art and things like that. People see fandoms build around their characters, but as a very small writer, not a famous writer, and not expecting it, you don't get that kind of feedback. You don't get the idea if anyone even likes your characters, let alone gets invested in them. So the fact that there's even, people choosing to remain loyal to a character insinuates that they've become emotionally attached to a character that you've created. And that's so lovely to see. As a writer, it's so rewarding to see people actually like it. They like your character, so much so that the opportunity to have a sexy scene with another character is just like, no, thank you. I'd rather stay loyal to this character, even though it's not just smut. They don't want smut, they want love. And I love that. I love the idea that people want love more than smut. I suppose, as someone, I don't know, I prefer love over smut as well, but because I'm new to the romance genre, I'm just assuming what people like. But no, It's really nice. And then not only do I, you can kind of get like caught up in the idea that you make mistakes as a writer, like, oh, people didn't like that, people didn't like this. What's brilliant about the Dorian platform is that I can go back and I can change it. Like, I've changed so many things today. Like, I need to write my next episode, but time you're watching this, new episode will be out. Please check it out. But I can change everything. I can change character dynamics, I can change options, I can change the text, I can tweak it, I can react to how people react. If people don't like the idea of slapping him, maybe I can write something else. Change that whole story, people can play it again with a complete different outcome. That to me is amazing. You can't do that with a book. Once you publish your book and it's out there, that's it. You don't know the bits that people didn't like. You don't know the areas that people really felt uncomfortable with. But with this, people can not only, you can read the stats and react to them, or people can leave comments. And they do. They leave comments. And with that, people have said, like, I wish this level was cheaper. Like, I wish it was cheaper hearts. I lowered all my heart prices on all of them because people commented that. And I was like, oh, okay. Thank you for letting me know. I will lower the heart count. And I've made things more affordable, I've made some things completely free again that I thought would be a heart valid, but actually I was like, I want more people to play it, so I'll make that entirely a free option for people. Things like that. And you can react live with your story, with people, and respond how they're responding. And if they don't like something, you're like, and it's not about catering to other people. I can see people reacting, going, oh, you shouldn't cater to other people, you should be organic to your story. It's not about that. It's about making the best experienced people. So a lot of the options that people haven't taken for me were my favorite scenes. So for me as a writer, it's not about catering and bending my writing to appease other people, but rather make it easier for them to access it and almost communicate better with my reader, i.e. the player. Communicate better with, this will benefit you. Learning how to communicate via my writing without being on the nose. At the same time, you have to be kind of on the nose. You can't be too subtle because then other people just completely miss it. So it's a real delicate balancing act. It's not about catering to other people's tastes and interests, but rather looking at what people react well to your writing and almost finding a niche. People find it difficult to be like, what niche do I do things in? And, where do I lie myself? Is my writing working? With this, I can see where people who like my writing and enjoy my stories actually enjoy the most, and I can feed off where they're enjoying it the most, and also respond to where I'm not being clear as a writer and adapting my writing to make it more enticing for them, more accessible to them, and giving them what they want, and also letting them see other areas of my writing that they missed out on because I wasn't clear with the opportunity or the advantages of paying hearts for this scene. And I think it's really important as well for me to highlight that LGBTQ+ is clearly a big market. People want to read it. Not on the bi spectrum, and they don't like everyone. But that's not the same for everyone. That's not the same for every queer person out there. And there should be storylines that cater to them within your context. And I want to encourage people to, when you're writing a Dorian story, to actually cater to other people, cater to same-sex relationships, and have that option for people. I see that takes more effort, but I think it's worth it because clearly there's a demand for it, clearly people are invested in it, and also clearly there are people who are wanting it and they're being overlooked by heteronormative romance stories. And there should be more queer stories, in my opinion, and so that's why this week is actually a queer challenge. I've chosen the goddess Artemis. The challenge is an LGBTQIA story with the goddess Artemis in a retelling, and the best story episode will win a $50 gift card over on Dorian. So the prompt will be down below, and so will all my other details. And a reminder, also, episode has just gone live, episode 7, but I'm actually streaming episode 7 on Fridays, and I cannot thank you enough for the people who come to my streams. I literally cry with laughter during those streams. They are the funniest streams we've ever done. Not last week's, but the weeks before stream. I was howling. I was literally crying with laughter because, again, it's a live reaction to my own story. I'm reading out clearly romance scenes, but also there were so many errors in it that it's just an experience. The streaming over on Dorian is just such a unique experience. Okay, you have to be there to see it. So if you want to chat with me on the stream, there's actually a Discord server, so I'll link the Discord server as well so we can chat together. But join on the stream 8 p.m. GMT tomorrow with episode 7, and hopefully it's just as funny as the other. Seriously, the people in the Discord make me laugh so much, and then when my story goes wrong, it's really hilarious. I cannot emphasize, it's such a unique streaming experience. I'm saying this, obviously this is a sponsored video, but I I've never experienced that before, because it's playing, I suppose it's very similar to gamers when they're playing their game, but obviously I'm playing my story. But it's my version of gaming, because I can't game to save my life, but I can write funny romance stories about Greek mythology. So that's my niche, I'm sticking to it. But thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you again, Dorian, for sponsoring this video. And remember, books save lives, so keep reading.